Listen-only mode.
Okay, well, welcome everybody to the GradSchools.com webinar, The 7 Deadly Sins of Graduate School Applicants, presented by Dr. Donald C. Martin, the author of The Roadmap for Graduate Study. Dr. Martin's here today to share his insights as an admissions expert with over 25 years of experience in the industry. We're going to go through a quick presentation, and then we're going to set aside time for questions and your questions and some answers from Dr. Martin. Please put your questions into the question box that you'll see on your screen. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Donald Martin.
Thank you very much, Laura, and good morning, afternoon, or evening to you folks, wherever you may be joining us from. It is a delight for me to be back with GradSchools.com once again, and I believe some of you that are online with us now actually were with us a few weeks ago when I did a companion presentation to this one called The 7 Ways to Get Positively Noticed as a Graduate School Applicant. So if you're back with us, thank you for joining us this second time. It's great to have you here. And what you're looking at right now is just some information on my background. Obviously, I'm not going to read this word for word, but I guess I wanted to convey to you that I have had the privilege of being involved in graduate enrollment and student services for many years. It's been an amazing career. I've loved just about every minute of it, maybe not every minute, but close to that. And certainly publishing my book and getting started with Grad School Roadmap, my own business, working with prospective graduate students has been a real thrill and a pleasure. And as I said, it's a pleasure to be here today. I will be speaking with you about these, what I call the 7 deadly sins for graduate school applicants. But before that, I would like to share just a couple of other quick pieces of information with you. I shared this in the other presentation on the 7 ways to get positively noticed, but I think it is so critically important. There are some mistakes, I believe, prospective graduate students make, sometimes not intentional, in fact, most times not intentional. But nonetheless, these can make a huge difference in the success that students experience when they actually enroll in their master's or, doctoral studies program. And the first of these that I've listed here is probably, in my opinion, the biggest mistake you can make, and that is not doing adequate research before you apply. I know some of you may be getting ready to submit applications in the next month or two. I still believe you have some time to do some more research if you need to. And what I mean by doing adequate research is making sure that the choices that you make in terms of where you're going to apply are not based on the second item here that I've listed on this slide. Many, many prospective students make the decision about where they're going to apply or where they will ultimately enroll based on 2 things. Word of mouth or rankings. Am I suggesting that these are absolutely not important? Of course not. I'm not suggesting that you not use word of mouth or rankings as part of your research process, but if that is the entire research process you undertake, I think you are making a large mistake. There are many institutions out there that may never appear on a ranking that are just as outstanding, just as good, have just as high a placement rate and a success rate for alumni as any of those who are ranked. And I think you need to be very careful of how much emphasis you place on a ranking that changes almost every time it is released, or on the word of mouth of individuals who may be well-intentioned, but after all, this is your graduate education we're talking about, not theirs. So please take the time to do adequate research. I'll mention something about my book later in the program, but I do want you to know the whole first chapter of my book, that one of the reasons, primary reasons I wrote it and published it was to help people have a plan of action of how to do good research. Obviously, the final point on this slide, make sure you do some good comparison shopping between all of the many options that you have available to you before you narrow that group down to the 5 or 6 or 7 schools to which you're going to submit an application. So just some tips there related to some mistakes to avoid as you're getting started in the research process before you apply. One other very, very important tip I'd like to provide to you before we now get, and then we'll get to the 7 deadly sins. The greatest way to help yourself as an applicant by far is to just be yourself. This may seem very simplistic. You may think, Don, why are you even saying this? This just doesn't, you know, this seems so clear to me. Well, it often isn't. Applicants, over the years that I worked with prospective students and applicants to graduate school, oftentimes I would be asked a question that sounded like this: what can I do to kind of manipulate the admissions committee to like me? What do I have to say? What do I have to, what are the right words for me to say so that they'll decide to admit me? If you're approaching this from that standpoint, I think you're making a mistake. You don't have to alter who you are. You need to be yourself. Why? There's only one of you out there. Everybody else is taken. So you need to focus on being yourself, just who you are. You've got a lot of wonderful qualities to bring to the table as an applicant, as a prospective student. So you just need to focus on being who you are and presenting yourself. I often say when individuals are preparing essays, the admissions committee needs to hear your voice. They need to hear you, not somebody else, not what you think they want you to say. They need to hear how you really feel, because that, in doing that, you come across as genuine, real, and honest. And you know what? All of us like to be around people we can trust and who we think are real and honest and genuine. That's what you need to convey. That's what you need to focus on as an applicant. Now, having said that, what are some things you want to avoid? Some very major pitfalls. Again, I'm not suggesting all of these or any of them may be intentional at times, but they so often happen. And over the years, as an admissions dean at Columbia, University of Chicago, Northwestern, Wheaton College, I saw these things happen so many times, and it derailed somebody's graduate school plans that it wouldn't have had to. So what are the 7 deadly sins for graduate applicants? Here we go. Number 1. Oh, well, let me just tell you. These are based on my 28 years of experience, and as I said, they in many instances are unintentional. But it doesn't matter. If you intended it or not, if it happens, it's going to hurt you. Deadly sin number 1, dishonesty. Ladies and gentlemen, there is absolutely no excuse for this, and more importantly, there's no reason for it. All of the examples here that I've shared with you on this slide happened in my experience, and more. There are many more examples of dishonesty, but these 4 are some of the main examples of this that happened every single year I was in the work of being an admissions dean. I'll take the first one. Someone who had a 3.1 GPA would change it to a 3.7 on their resume. Or they had a test score, they had a GRE score of maybe a 150 on the verbal section, and they increased it to 165. I'm not sure why they would think that this wouldn't be checked, but it was so sad when this happened and so unnecessary. Why do I think applicants are sometimes tempted to be dishonest? And by the way, we're all tempted to be dishonest. That's part of being human. I'm just saying that you don't have to act on it. And I think the reason that students are tempted to do this is they start thinking, oh my word, there's going to be so many applications to this program. And look at me. I don't have very much to offer. My GPA isn't as high, or I don't have as much on my resume as somebody else, and I don't know that I think I write as well as somebody else does. And so, because of this feeling that somehow, in and of themselves, they're not good enough, they yield to the temptation to do something to try to make themselves look better. And if you are caught, and the chances of you being caught are getting greater and greater and greater every year, admissions offices are figuring out ways to validate what information is provided to them by applicants. This is happening more and more all the time. So for various reasons, my advice, don't do this. Will you be tempted to? Yes. Does that say you're a bad person? No. Dishonest people are not necessarily bad people either. They just had a temporary lapse in judgment. I'm suggesting to you not to yield to this temptation and have that lapse in judgment, because if you're caught, obviously, at any point in the process, you will be either unadmitted, you could be expelled from your program if you get that far. It's just so unnecessary, so sad, and I'm asking you, don't go there. Please don't be dishonest. Number 2, second deadly sin, rude or arrogant behavior. No excuse for this. Now, do we all have bad days? Sure. Are we tired sometimes, or just something's on our mind? We have something going on in our own personal lives that is affecting us? Absolutely. Of course we do. But that is not an excuse for you to take that, what's going on, and translate it into inappropriate behavior with the admissions staff or in the admissions process. And I provided, again, some examples here, and I have to tell you again, you might look at these and think, did somebody really do this? Yes. All 3 of these examples that I provided actually occurred, and many more. I could probably write a book about the type of behavior that I encountered from applicants, which was so shocking to me. I couldn't imagine someone behaving in such a way. This is any information or any interaction that you have with the admissions office during your application process. You need to know this is an opportunity for you to distinguish yourself as a very professional candidate, as someone who speaks well, who handles difficulty well, who can deal with whatever comes down the road during that application process in a consistently calm, confident, and professional manner. If you're able to convey that, you will set yourself apart. You will also set yourself apart by being rude and arrogant, but unfortunately, you'll also be denied, or you won't be taken any further along in the application process. No excuse for this. Deadly sin number 3. Now, this is a little bit less intentional, I think, or students may not realize that this could even be happening, but you do not want to contact the admissions office too often. This makes you look desperate. It makes you look like you're not able to follow directions or read for yourself, and you're having to rely on the admissions office to do it for you, or when people contact you in your daily life, and they're contacting you all the time, I mean, it gets a little bit overbearing. It gets a little much. We used to get calls from people every week. Hello, it's me again. I was like, what is going on here? And they would be asking questions they could answer for themselves, or they were just wanting to say, I just wanted to let you know, I'm still interested. And the fact that you're interested is good, but there is such a thing as too much contact, and you want to be very careful and beware of over-contacting the admissions staff, the admissions office during the application process. Okay, number 4. This is huge. This is absolutely huge. Not following directions. If you are asked to provide an essay, let's say, of 750 words, many of them are of the larger essays for an application, the requirement might be 500 to 750 words. If that is what you are asked to provide, that's what you should provide. I had a gentleman, when I was working at Columbia, we had a 750-word personal statement that was required for the application. This gentleman sent us his master's thesis of 100 pages. That was his response to our requirement for that essay. Now, I don't have time to read 100 pages in the first place, but more importantly, that's not what we asked him to do. We asked him for a 750-word essay. If that's what you're asked for, provide that. If you're asked to provide 2 letters of recommendation, don't send 10. Send 2. Send what they ask. If you think you need to send a 3rd recommendation letter for whatever reason, there may be times when that could be warranted. Call the admissions office or email them and say, for various reasons, I'm wondering if it would be possible for me to submit an extra letter. Get their permission to do that. Then you do it. This begs the question, as I'm sure you can imagine. If you can't follow directions as an applicant, what is this going to say about how you'll follow policies and procedures and directions when you're enrolled as a student? You may not always understand what they're asking of you. Some of the requirements in the application may not make sense to you, but if that's what they're asking, then you need to do that, and you need to follow the directions that they have given you to follow. Okay, number 5, deadly sin. Very important. Sending the wrong or non-proofed information. Oh, my word. I can't tell you, and this is for graduate school, mind you. These are no longer undergraduates. These are adult students who have been out there. You know, they graduated from high school a long time ago. Some of them have graduated from college a long time ago. I was shocked at the type of information we would receive that was a resume, for instance, or essays, riddled with, I'm not talking one spelling error or a typo. That's, of course, understandable. I'm talking absolutely throughout the documents. There were major content errors, major grammar errors, major spelling errors. When that occurs, what does that say to the admissions committee? It's one of two things, or both of these things. You did not take the time to really look at what you were sending in. And secondly, you must not be very interested in that institution, or you would have taken the time to adequately review what you were planning to send. So please do not, this is really not part of this, but I'm going to add it in free of charge. How do you like that? Another quick tip. When you're applying, some students think, I've got to apply for the first deadline. I've got to apply for the first deadline because I'll have the greatest chance. And there could be some truth to that in some instances. But what happens is if you rush, the likelihood of you're making mistakes, having errors, not proofing your work goes up too. What you need to be careful of is that you're applying when you know that application is ready, that you've proofed it, that the essays are the way you want them, the resume is the way you want it, that you've done your homework, and you have an application. So if it means that you don't apply for the first round, I would say to you, you are better off waiting to the next round and making sure your application is the way you want it than risking the chance of making all these mistakes for the first round, which will ultimately result in your being denied. Now, another way that you can mess up here is sending essays to the wrong program. And I know this can happen, but you need to be so careful. I used to read, when I worked at Columbia, for instance, I would get an essay from someone and they'd say, and that is why the Stanford University School of Education has always been my #1 choice, and if you admit me, I'll come. Well, you know what I would say? Well, you know, I hope you get in there. Obviously, you don't want Columbia. Bye-bye. That was an easy choice. And maybe this, you know, if you make sure when you do some of the essays you write will be similar. Some of the information you provide in one essay for one school will be similar for what you do for another school. That's okay, because the questions they're asking could be similar. But when you're going to talk about a specific program and whether it's your first choice, you need to absolutely be certain that that essay goes to that school and not somewhere else. So please make sure that you send the correct information, correctly proofed information when you do. It will make a huge difference in your favor. Deadly sin number 6. Oh, this is huge. This is huge, ladies and gentlemen. Asking questions you could answer for yourself. This is a big problem today where people don't, again, do their research. They don't look for themselves, and they ask what, in my opinion, are extremely bad questions. What are the 2 worst questions I've had? And I'm telling you, I have been asked these questions over and over and over again. Every year I would be asked these questions. People would come up to my display table at a graduate fair, or they would send an email, or they would see me at an event we were having on campus at Columbia or Chicago or Northwestern. These applicants would truly walk up to me and say, what are your application deadlines? I was absolutely stunned. I wanted to say to them, you mean to tell me you came all the way here to my campus, or you took the time to come all the way here to speak to me about my program, and you're asking me a simple question of application deadlines, which is all over our website. It's in every printed material we do from the admissions office. It's in the application instructions. Why are you wasting your time and my time asking me that question? You know what I did? I would write their name down. Write their name down, and it was not because I was pleased with the fact that I was writing it down. I wanted to keep track. You know, this applicant wasted time and obviously isn't very interested in our program. A worse question, letter B, then this is even worse than the first one. Do you offer financial aid? Do you know how tempted I was? I wanted to say, no, we have nothing to offer. You have to pay cash for your entire program, and if you can't afford it, we can't, speak with you. I mean, talk about an inappropriate question. Every institution offers financial aid. If you start asking questions like this that it is very clear you could have found the answers for, you're going to hurt yourself. What are good questions? Something like this. You know, you have an internship program in Zimbabwe. It's a study abroad or an exchange program or an internship opportunity. I read up on it. I've got a couple of questions about how it actually works. That's much, much more an indication that you did your homework, you did your research, you know about that program. You're not coming up and saying, do you have internships? No, you know that they do have an internship program, and you're very interested in one of them, and you've read about it, and now you'd like to know more. That's very positive. But please do not ask questions that you can answer for yourself. That is just very, very unhelpful to you. Final tip, number 7, also very, very critical. Leaving something unaddressed in the application or making excuses for it. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, some applicants have taken a break, maybe, in their educational journey or in their employment situation. They may have started out with their undergraduate experience, then they took 3 years off to travel, or something came up and they had to step back, and then they came back 3 years later and they're starting up again, and they finished their bachelor's. Or they took some time off between jobs, or they got laid off and it took them a while to find another position. They may have had during their undergrad experience, or even in another master's program or graduate program, they had a poor academic semester, or their record. There are things that happen in life to all of us that are unexpected, or that maybe were not exactly the plan that we had initially thought we were going to follow. That's understandable. But if you believe that something about your background, your resume, your experience, your education is going to raise a question with the admissions committee, then you benefit yourself to address that for them and let them know that you're aware that this could be a question in their mind and that you would like to address it. By addressing it, however, do not make excuses. Oh, poor me, life has been so hard, I've had such a hard life. No. Let's take an example here of a poor academic semester. You had a bad semester. Let's say, which has happened in many cases. Some of the students I knew, they lost a loved one. A member of their family suddenly died. I went through this a year ago myself. One of my nephews was killed in a car accident in August of 2013. Totally sudden, out of the blue. Did this affect my world for a while? Absolutely, yes, it did. I know how that feels. Other people have been in a car accident. They've had a medical emergency, a financial problem. Something happened, and it affected their ability to focus on their studies. That's very understandable. That's not an excuse. That is an explanation. So if there is something in your past, in your record, in your application that you think they're going to want to know about, that the admissions committee is going to say, this doesn't quite, I wonder what's going on here. If you think that's what they're going to be wondering about, then you should explain it. Where do you do that? Well, many institutions offer the option for you to do an optional essay, an extra essay. They may say, is there anything else you would like the admissions committee to know about your application? That is the place to put that information. And if they don't offer you that opportunity to do the optional essay, then instead of that, you can just write a letter. Write an additional email, or I would say write a letter and send it in and ask them to put it in your application, that you have additional information to explain. That, to me, would be the advisable way. And if the institution says, look, we don't want you to send anything else beyond what we've asked you to submit, and they didn't give you an option for an additional essay, then you need to contact them and say, there's something I would like to further explain to you about my application. How can I do that? And let them tell you. So it is important to you that you do not leave something like this unaddressed, or if you do talk about it, explain it. Provide it, that's legitimate to provide that explanation. Just don't end up making excuses where it looks like you're not taking responsibility for what happened, or you're blaming somebody else, or you're feeling sorry for yourself. That's not the place to do this in any way. All right. We have gone through these tips fairly quickly, and one of the reasons I did that is because of questions I hope you're going to want to ask me now. As I still have a few more things I want to share with you before we get to the Q&A, but I want to say this right now. I hope many of you, if not all of you, will ask some questions of me as was done last time. It was wonderful. We had question after question after question. And if there's anything I've said that doesn't make sense to you, if there's something I haven't discussed that you want to ask about, please now start sending your questions in, because maybe in about 5 or 10 minutes, I'm going to turn the microphone back over to Laura, and we're going to see what questions we have. She will read the questions, and then I will answer them. So please, please, please start sending your questions in. I love questions. There's no dumb questions. I don't know who you are. I'm not keeping track of you. So whatever you want to ask, if you need to know it and you want to know about it, then you should ask it. So start asking those questions, okay? And it looks like, if I'm seeing this right, we are already getting, Laura's shaking her head telling me, oh good, okay, we're getting lots of questions. Wonderful. All right, so in order to get there, you're going to have to listen to me for a couple more slides, and then I promise I will get to your questions. If you would like to learn more about what I do, what I offer in my work, I'm providing you some information here. My website is simply GradSchoolRoadmap.com, and you can see at the very bottom of this slide my email address, dmartin@GradSchoolRoadmap.com. One of the things I offer, you'll see it up here on the slide, is coaching. I actually work one-on-one with prospective and current graduate students. I cover a lot of topics in this coaching work, so if you would like to work with me in that regard, all you need to do is send me an email or call me at the phone number there if you're here in the States. That 773 number is a number there in Chicago. You can call me or you can email me. I would love to speak with you further and possibly work with you as an admissions coach. I will simply tell you that to date, I've worked with probably 100 to 200 students so far in the past 6 years since I've been doing my own work in coaching, and 99% of them, all but 2 students, have been admitted to more than one of their graduate school choices. So I think that's a pretty good track record of all these students that I've worked with. It's been a privilege, and I would love to work with you in that regard if that would be of interest to you. I also want to mention the book. I told you earlier on, and Laura mentioned that I wrote a book. It's called Roadmap for Graduate Study, a guide for prospective graduate students. If you go on my website, you can order the book right there, and if you're an international student or you wish to receive the international supplement that I wrote for the book in 2009, if you show me proof of purchase, I will send you my international student supplement to the book free of charge. So once again, you can go onto my website, order the book there. It's only 100 pages long. It's not a long book. The price is $14.95 or, excuse me, $9.95 for an e-version of the book. You can have either option. So I hope you'll log on and check that out. And now, as I told you, we are at the point where I'm going to start answering some questions, and by golly, I'm seeing here that we got a lot of them. So I'm going to have Laura come back over here to the microphone, but before she does, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you'll stay tuned for the Q&A. Sometimes that's even more informative than just me sharing my information. So I hope all of you that are on here are going to stay on to hear these questions, and that you'll keep them coming. And you know, I'm going to go back one slide now to my email address, so that if after this is over you want to communicate further with me, that you have my email address. It's right at the bottom of that slide, dmartin@GradSchoolRoadmap.com. But right now, once again, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to turn it back over to Laura, who will start taking us through some of the questions that she thinks would be helpful for me to answer. Okay, Laura, it's all yours.
Well, thanks, Don. As always, I always learn a little bit more about the industry listening to your presentation.
Thank you.
And we do have a lot of really great questions coming in.
Oh, good, good, good. All right.
We're going to start with a question from Sophia Moran, and she's asking, what do you look for in an applicant in terms of personality?
Sophia, that's a good question, and I know this may sound like a very lame response to your question, but it's really what I said earlier. We're not looking for a specific personality per se. What we are looking for is, are you able to be yourself? There's a variety of personalities in this world, as you and I know, and each one of them brings something wonderful to the table in who they are. There's outgoing people, there's more quiet people, there's people who like to be more leaders, there's people who like to be more followers, there's people who love to be in social settings, there's people who like to be a little more private. That's all fine. That's all good. There is not one personality type that is more successful in graduate school than another, not by any means. More importantly, I think the admissions committee would want to know that you're very comfortable in your own shoes, whatever your personality may be. So I'm very glad you asked that. That's a very good question, Sophia. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. We have another one from Chad. Chad says, I'm currently in the process of applying to a chemistry graduate program, and I have come across the question, what other institutions are you applying to? What's the purpose of this question, and is there a right or wrong answer to provide?
Chad, that is a great question, too, and I can understand why you would ask about it. The reason that I know when I was at Chicago, Columbia, and Northwestern, we did ask that question. Now, it was optional. Students didn't have to respond, and if they didn't, it didn't reflect negatively on them for us. But we were simply trying to do some research to find out where other applicants were applying when they were applying to our program. In other words, we were trying to find out who our major competitors are. What other schools out there, for instance, when I was at Columbia, I worked at Teachers College. So it was helpful to know, what other schools like ours are these applicants applying to? So if it's an optional question, obviously you don't have to answer it if you don't wish. But I encourage you to answer it. There's nothing wrong with them knowing where else you're applying. It's not a question that puts you in any jeopardy in any way. It's more for their research purposes to find out who they're competing with. Good question.
This is a technical question about Opio from Leah.
All right.
Leah's asking if the session is being recorded, and the answer is yes, and it will be available by the end of the week on GradSchools.com, and I'll also send out, and there'll be a reminder from GoToWebinar with the link to the recording. So
very good.
Thank you, Leah. That's just good information for anybody. You can definitely revisit this. Dr. Martin's previous presentation is also available at GradSchools.com, so I can email that to you privately. Sophia, what's your advice for international applicants? Do we have to pay extra attention to some aspect in particular? How do we make ourselves stand out?
Okay, the question is, again, what if you're an international applicant, can you make yourself stand out? How do you make yourself stand out? In all honesty, Sophia, I don't believe you should do anything differently than any of the applicants in the U.S. would do. The important thing is, again, that you follow directions, you provide the admissions committee with what they've asked, and most importantly, again, that you give them a sense of who you are. I believe I said this earlier in the presentation, but when you're doing your essays, in my opinion, what you should be doing is pretending that you're sitting in the room with the admissions committee at that point and you're talking with them. The essay should be very conversational, so that when people talk with you or when people talk with me, they get a sense of our distinct personality, of who we are. We all have that. That's something unique about all of us. And what you want is for the admissions committee to hear your voice and get to know you. And then, of course, you want to let them know that you're interested in that program, that you'd like to be there, and what you believe you have to offer. But that's what every applicant should do, regardless of what citizenship they hold. Good question.
Thank you. Bobby asks, I have only one reference letter and have been I've been out of school for a while. The university I'm applying to is seeking 2 letters of recommendation. How do I address this lack of recommendation letter?
Robbie, thank you for asking that, because here again, what you're wanting to do is make sure that you're trying to follow directions as best you can. My strong recommendation is that you contact the schools to which you are applying and indicate that because you have been out of school for a while or whatever, you feel you only have one major letter of recommendation that you can submit at this point. And what would they advise you to do? Is that acceptable? Is that okay? there again, what that shows them is you are diligently trying to follow their guidelines, but on the other hand, you don't want to have someone recommend you who doesn't know you well enough to do it. And if that's your situation, I would strongly recommend that you reach out to the institution and explain that to them and let them provide you with their specific feedback. I don't think that would reflect negatively on you. I think it would reflect positively that you are trying to follow directions, but you're not sure quite how to do that. So that's a very good question. Thanks for asking.
Thank you. Maya asks, how early is too early to send in an application?
How early is too? Well, Maya, my best answer there is most institutions will provide deadlines on their website and on their admissions instructions page for what deadline you need to use if you're applying, or they'll give you a choice of a couple of deadlines. So now, let's say there's a deadline of December 1st. I wouldn't suggest that you send the application much ahead of about a week before that deadline, because in all honesty, even though they may set it up in the computer if it comes in early, they're not going to process that application and start looking at it until after the deadline. So if there's a deadline of December 1st or January 1st, February 1st, sending your application in starting about a week before that, I think, is entirely appropriate. There will be situations where the institution has what's called a rolling admissions situation, where you can pretty much send your application in anytime. In that instance, I would say once you believe the application is ready, you've reviewed it, you know for sure it's ready to go, then go ahead and send it in. I don't think it's at that point if what they have is called rolling admissions, and they would explain that again on their website, on their application instruction page. Good question.
So we have two kind of similar questions in the page.
Okay.
So we'll kind of take both of those at once.
Okay.
From Stephanie, she's a graduate assistant, and she's currently earning her MS. She's expected to graduate this December. Congratulations, Stephanie.
Yes.
She's interested in applying for a PhD program or another master's program.
Okay.
She has a less than stellar GPA. Since then, as a master's student, she's improved her resume.
Okay.
And how does she explain being young and dumb?
Well, I'm sorry, Laura, if I interrupted you.
And then similarly from Frederick, he had to take a year off for a personal problem.
Yes.
And he's wondering about how he can address that on the admission statement.
All right, Stephanie and Frederick, both of you are, this is great. You're asking really around that seventh deadly sin I talked about, where there's something you would like to address in your application and you're kind of wondering how to do it. Well, obviously you want to do it honestly. In the case, I'm going to take Frederick first, and Stephanie, I haven't forgotten about you. Frederick, in your situation, you simply want to let the committee know that you had, they don't need to know the specifics. They have absolutely no need, nor would they wish to know all of the specifics of what it was that prompted you to have to take some time off. But the point was you did. And you could say, I had a personal emergency, a situation which arose that resulted in my needing to take some time off. And there will be no criticism about that at all, as long as you're able to say that that's what was going on. If you want to speak with me privately later or send me an email to ask further about that situation, feel free to do it. But I think just letting them know that you had a situation like this, you will not be discriminated against. You will not be viewed in a negative way. This happens to many applicants. So taking that time off was probably the best thing you could do under the circumstances. So I would just say let them know. Stephanie, related to your situation, you are indicating, I believe, that your undergraduate record perhaps was not what you would have wanted or thought it could be, and you're concerned now about applying for a second master's or a doctoral program. The good news is it sounds like your experience after undergrad has gotten better and that you've done very well in your master's program. And let me tell you, that's what the admissions committee is going to focus on. They're not going to focus on something that happened 6 years, 7 years, 8 years ago. I'm not saying they'll discount it entirely, but they're going to look at what you've been doing more recently. And if that's been successful and you have a strong track record, that will definitely offset what went on earlier. However, if you feel you need to make a statement to say, you know, I recognize my undergraduate record is not as strong as I would have liked, but I hope the admissions committee will take a look at what I've accomplished since then and see that as more indicative of my capabilities and what I believe I can do. That's what I would suggest you say to them. But again, the more experience you have, the more recent experience, that's what's looked at most closely. And the fact that you have been more successful academically in your current master's program, to me, is all in your favor. Very good questions from both of you. Thank you.
Olava, and excuse my pronunciation of asked, if my GPA is not competitive, what else can I do to make her a stronger applicant?
Good question. If your GPA is not what you would like it to be, I would think there might be some other things from your background that you could highlight. For instance, did you have any internships? Did you do any special independent study work? Did you do any independent research? Were you involved in extracurricular activities of any kind? Have you been involved in community or volunteer work? So many other things that applicants bring to the table all can be helpful in the application process. In fact, many times in my experience, if we had an applicant who had outstanding academics, like a 4.0 GPA and a terrific test score, but they didn't have anything else to go with it, that applicant was often denied or placed on the waiting list. We were looking for individuals who had a bit more of a well-rounded background, shall we say. So if you have other areas of your experience that you can highlight, along the lines of those items I just mentioned, that will be very much helpful to you as an applicant. Most committees are not just looking for somebody who's strong in academics. They really aren't. Good question.
A couple of questions related to research experience.
Okay.
How important is research experience when applying to a PhD program, and what are some of the ways you can seek out opportunities for those?
The question has to do with how important research is when you're applying for a PhD program. I definitely think it helps. I don't say that it absolutely has to be part of your resume. It was not part of mine. When I applied for my PhD program at Northwestern University, I had a master's degree, obviously, so that helped. But I had done some research, but I hadn't written a huge thesis yet, and I was admitted. So, in my opinion, if you have some work experience combined with your undergraduate work and you've done a master's degree, all of those things will be helpful when applying to a PhD. If you are looking for research opportunities, I would think the best way to do that would be through an educational context. If you're an undergrad, maybe asking a faculty member if you could do some research with them during the summer or do an independent study with them, for instance. In a graduate program, similarly, many times at the graduate level, a master's student may have an opportunity to work with a professor on a particular grant that they've been given from the government or from an organization to study a particular topic, and they may hire graduate students to work with them in that capacity. If it's chemistry, biology, maybe a professor has a lab, and the students will have an opportunity to be involved in a research effort in their particular chemistry or biology lab. So through the educational arena, at your institution, whether you're an undergrad or grad student, getting an opportunity to do some research that way. And one final way is to do your own independent study. If you're interested in a topic, you may have done your own study on it and might be able to demonstrate, here's what I've read, here's some things I've initially written about this topic, and you could demonstrate your own personal private research as a way of helping the admissions committee to know that this is something that is of interest to you. If you have any more questions specifically on that, you've got my email address. Feel free to shoot me an email if you wish. Good questions, very good questions. And it looks like we still have, this is wonderful. They keep coming in, so this is great. Thank you. What other questions do we have, Laura?
So Andre is asking that on the first slide that you showed, it said rankings are not always important.
Yes.
And you wanted a little bit of clarification on that.
Okay, Andre, I'm glad you asked. You're asking me to clarify my statement that I don't think rankings are that important. I don't believe they are. In my 28 to 30 years of experience, I've never seen a direct correlation between success in your career and the ranking of the institution you attended. Am I saying that you shouldn't think about institutions that have a rank? Of course not. If there's an institution that you believe is a match for you because of the program they offer, the faculty, the people that are there, you've met the students, you've met the alumni, this is a program, you've read the courses, you know how the curriculum is taught, all of that. If that's what's gotten to you, then sure, if you want to apply there. But to apply to a program simply because it's number 2 on a ranking, to me, is absolutely fruitless and a huge mistake. What's so sad about these rankings is they seem to become so popular among prospective students, and when you think about it, what is the primary reason these rankings are being provided in the first place? It's to sell a magazine or a newspaper. They change every year. The rankings never stay the same. In some cases, that is statistically impossible. I won't mention names, but there's one ranking that ranks business schools. One year, a school might be number 2, and the next year, they drop to number 15. That is statistically impossible. It cannot be that bad that it would drop over that time. And yet, people get all up in arms about this. Oh, they dropped in the rankings. It's terrible. That's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. A ranking should be a resource for you, but never your only resource. And there is absolutely no evidence that whether you go to a number 2 ranked school or a number 22 ranked school, that you somehow have a disadvantage if you're at number 22 in terms of success in your career. There's no evidence to support that. So that's what I was referring to earlier. Again, if you have more questions for me about that, feel free to shoot me an email. Good question, Andre. I'm glad you asked.
And we're starting to run out of time, but we have...
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
It's fine. We had a couple of questions about the coaching services that you provide.
Yes.
So Samantha wants to know, is there a fee associated with the coaching services? And another question is referring to the types of students that you work with. And do you work with international students? And do you have any restrictions?
Okay. Good questions. Let me see here. Yes, I work with students from all over the world, actually. I've been very fortunate. I have coaching students in Asia. I have coaching students in Europe. Recently, Africa has joined the list. I don't know if I've coached anyone from Australia yet, but I have coached students and am coaching students from Latin America, from Central and South America, and of course in the United States. So my coaching is open to students of any nationality in any part of the world, and I coach both master's and doctoral students. I coach students in any master's program, whether you're taking the GMAT, the GRE, the LSAT, or the MCAT. It's immaterial. I coach students with any graduate program interest. And I do have a fee structure that I will be happy to share with you one-on-one. The fee structure doesn't change, but I would prefer to do that. If you would like to know how my fee structure works and how the actual process works, please send me an email. We will schedule a time to chat. That will be a free consultation, by the way. There'll be no charge for that. Then I can tell you more about actually how it works, what I charge, and why my fee is the way it is. But yes, I work with students from all over the world. As I said at the beginning of the broadcast, Samantha, I'm not sure if you were here when I said it, so I'll say it one more time. 99% of the students I have coached worldwide have been admitted to one or more of their top graduate school choices since I've begun doing this, and this is from all over the world. I have a list I can send you of all the institutions to which my coaching students have been admitted thus far, if that would be of interest. So thank you for asking about that and giving me a chance to share a little bit more about it. It's one of the things I enjoy doing so very much. And I'm still taking students this year, by the way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Make sure that everybody was aware that they could get in contact with you again.
Thank you so much.
Because I don't think we're going to be able to get through all of these questions.
Oh, well, good. Well, then my email is on the bottom of that screen and my phone number.
So Joseph is asking, how important are interviews with graduate admissions or programs directors? If they're not required, should I still ask to have an interview?
Joseph, am I ever glad you asked that? That's an excellent question. I wish my answer was a little more positive because I'm very disappointed with the way things are going in the graduate admissions arena. They're not doing interviews as much as they used to. We used to, when I worked at Chicago Booth, the Graduate School of Business at the University of Chicago, interviews were granted to any applicant who requested one. And we did, oh my word, we might do 5,000 admission interviews every year. To me, it was one of the best ways to get to know an applicant. That is changing. I'm sure that there are cost factors involved in that. And now it seems that institutions have moved more to interviewing by invitation only, where they contact you and ask you if you'd like to interview. If that is not the case, there is absolutely nothing wrong with you mentioning in your application or when you speak with the admissions staff, I would be very interested in doing an interview. Is that possible? And at least put it out there. Let them know that you would like to do it. I think that's very appropriate. And by the way, I'm not trying to continue plugging my coaching all the time, but let me just say that part of my coaching service includes mock interviews, helping you get ready to do an interview with the admissions office. I've had some very good success in working with students, helping them prepare for interviews. Joseph, I'm glad you asked that question. That's a good one. How many more questions do you think we have time for, Laura? One or two? Or?
I think we have time for maybe one or two.
One or two more. Okay, folks. Thanks for everybody's been staying on. This is great. Thank you.
So Narg asks, is it true that previous applicants who were programmed who are once put on a wait list have a higher chance of admission on their second try?
That is true. The question is, if you were on the wait list the first time you applied and they ended up not being able to admit you after all, and you apply a second time, yes. The chance, in fact, I'm glad you asked this because I want to add something else to that. If you are outright denied the first time, you're not even put on a waiting list. You just apply and you are denied and you apply again, your chances go up. Many applicants think it's the opposite, that if, oh, I've been denied once, they'll never look at me again. That is absolutely not true. If you apply the first time, it doesn't work out, and you let them know, look, I'm still interested, you should, and by all means, ask for feedback. Ask for feedback if you get denied or waitlisted. And then when you reapply, tell them, thank you for that feedback you provided me. I so much want to go to your institution. I'm applying again. The chances if you're getting admitted, it's not 100% guaranteed, but the chances go up, not down. Excellent question.
And here's one from Michelle, and I think this is a good one to end with.
All right.
When looking for a graduate school is best for you, what should we be looking for? How do you figure out if a school is the right one?
Well, Michelle, if I wanted to really be difficult, I would say you have to purchase my book and get that answer, because Chapter 1 of my book is all about the research process. And in that book, in that chapter, I suggest to you that you create a spreadsheet with the names of the institutions you're thinking about on the left-hand column, but on the right-hand column should be all of the things that are most important to you in your graduate experience. What you want to do, and in the book I suggest there are probably 26 different areas that you might want to evaluate. I'll give you a couple of them here. The location of the program. Do you have a particular locational preference? Many students do. What about the size of the student body? Are you looking for an institution that has 1,000 graduate students, or would you prefer one where there's only 25? That would be a consideration. What about the type of faculty? You should be doing a very thorough search on the faculty of each institution you're thinking about. Things along this line, there's 26 of them I list in the book. And by the way, if you are even wondering, well, how can I find out what options are out there? Let me now put a plug in for GradSchools.com. This is the most, I say this, I travel all over the world, and I say this just so Laura knows. I'm not just saying this because I'm doing the webinar here today. I say this all the time wherever I travel. GradSchools.com is the biggest and best resource you can find for information on graduate schools. Over 70,000 accredited graduate programs featured on their website. And it's free of charge to you. You just log on, www.gradschools.com. Plug in the field that you're thinking about, the type of degree you would like, a master's, doctorate, master of arts, master of science, MBA, whatever. You will get a complete list of, in some cases, hundreds of graduate school options. It's phenomenal. So you put that together with the information I provided in my book, in my first chapter on research, you have a very, very solid approach that will lead you to some schools that will really work for you. And after all, it's your life, your money, your graduate education we're talking about. So that was a great question to end with. This was wonderful. Oh, my word. I had a great time.
The questions are always my favorite part, too.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So thank you, everybody, for attending, and thank you so much for your participation. If we didn't get to your question, we apologize. Please do feel free to reach out to Dr. Martin. You can also reach out to us at Grad Schools, and we will have this recording of the webinar available on our website, and I will send out a follow-up email to everybody with links to Dr. Martin's previous presentation. So thank you all once again for attending, and we'll hope to see you at the next webinar.
Bye-bye.